They called it the final frontier, an ocean of white silence where the sun disappears for months and the air itself feels alive, waiting. In 1845, two mighty ships set sail from England, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, carrying over 100 men chasing glory through the Arctic ice. They believed they'd return as heroes, but what they found was the graveyard of the living. The last messages scratched into metal, the frozen faces still staring at the horizon. No battle, no storm, just the slow, cold hand of nature closing around human pride. For more than a century, the world asked, where did they go? What really happened to them under that endless white sky? Tonight, we go beneath the ice, into the silence, into the truth. Welcome to Sea Shadows, where the ocean remembers everything we tried to forget. It was the summer of 1845. The River Thames shimmered under a pale London sky, and the harbor was alive with excitement. Crowds lined the docks, waving hats and flags, watching as two magnificent ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, prepared to set sail. To the British Empire, it was more than an expedition. It was destiny, a final conquest, the discovery of the Northwest Passage, a route through the Arctic ice that would connect Europe to Asia. Sir John Franklin, a decorated officer in his 60s, stood tall on deck. He'd fought in wars, mapped uncharted coasts, and survived starvation once before. He was called the man who ate his boots for what he'd done to survive an earlier Arctic mission. But this time would be different. This time, he had everything: steam engines, reinforced iron hulls, libraries of maps, and men who believed they were unstoppable. As the ships drifted from shore, the crowds cheered, cannons fired, the band played. Nobody knew they were watching ghosts depart. The voyage began with promise. The first few months were calm, endless horizons of blue, cold winds biting but bearable. The men sang shanties, logged their progress, even wrote letters home filled with confidence. "We'll return before the year's end," one wrote. "The ice won't hold us." But as they reached the northern edge of Baffin Bay, something changed. The sea began to harden. Ice formed like glass around the ships, the air turning heavier, colder. A silence fell over the crew. The laughter faded. The white horizon stretched endlessly, no birds, no sound, just the deep groan of the ice pressing against their hulls. By September, they were trapped. The men hacked at the ice with axes, tried to free the ships, but nature didn't move. The Arctic doesn't fight, it waits. Slowly, day by day, it closed around them, sealing them inside a frozen cage. The temperature dropped below freezing, and with it came the first fear. Food supplies were rationed. The salted beef began to rot. The canned goods, once symbols of progress, leaked and poisoned the men. Their gums bled, their skin bruised at the slightest touch. Scurvy crept in like a shadow. Inside Erebus, the air smelled of oil, sweat, and desperation. The candles flickered, shadows dancing across frost-covered walls. Officers still gave orders, trying to hold discipline, but the men had started to change. They whispered in the dark, about rescue, about home, about the sounds outside the ship at night. Sometimes they said they heard voices, faint, calling their names from the ice. The human mind begins to break when trapped in silence. Days blended into nights. The sun disappeared for months. The world became nothing but gray, frozen sky, and endless white ground. The ticking of a clock became unbearable. The sound of your own breathing, too loud. Some laughed for no reason. Some cried and didn't know why. Captain Franklin wrote his last notes with trembling hands. His handwriting grew smaller, uneven. "We are still beset in ice. No sign of release. The men grow weaker." And then the journal stopped. Spring didn't come. The ice didn't melt. The ships, once symbols of empire and ambition, now floated in silence, wooden coffins buried in white. The Arctic doesn't kill quickly. It breaks you slowly, not with violence, but with indifference. By the time the world began to wonder where Franklin had gone, it was already too late. The men had begun leaving the ships, dragging sleds across the frozen wasteland, trying to walk toward salvation. They left behind their home, their captain, their sanity. Their footprints are still there, frozen into the ice, like echoes of their final steps. And as the last man turned back to look at the ships, disappearing into the gray fog, he must have realized the truth. They hadn't discovered the passage. The passage had consumed them. The wind screamed across the ice, a hollow echo rolling over an endless white plain. The ships, once symbols of pride, were now silent, black shapes half buried in snow. The remaining crew stood huddled in the cold, their faces hidden under layers of frost and despair. They had made their decision. The ships were no longer their salvation. They were their tombs. They packed what little they had, rifles, a few tins of food, a Bible, and their captain's portrait, and began walking south. Over 1,000 kilometers of frozen wasteland stood between them and the nearest hope of rescue. No trails, no landmarks, no light. Just ice. Every step echoed like a heartbeat in the snow. Their breath came in clouds, freezing instantly. Some stumbled from exhaustion. Others simply stopped and never got up again.
But still they walked, because to stop was to die.
One of the officers, Lieutenant Crozier, took command after Franklin's death. He was Irish, quiet, stubborn, unshakable, a man who believed that if they kept moving, maybe, just maybe, they could survive. He wrote in a final note found years later, "All hope is lost. We go on foot toward the Great Fish River." That note was pinned inside a metal cylinder, left in a cairn of stones on a desolate island, their final message to the world. As the men moved inland, the Arctic showed no mercy. Temperatures dropped below -40. The ice cracked beneath their boots like breaking glass. The wind howled so loud they couldn't hear each other's voices. At night, the aurora blazed across the sky, green, red, shimmering like a ghostly fire. The last beauty they would ever see. One by one, the men fell behind. Some went mad from hunger. Others whispered prayers through frozen lips. Some began talking to people who weren't there. The line between life and death blurred, the body numb, the mind lost in dreams. Days turned to weeks. The surviving few reached the edge of King William Island, half-starved, hallucinating, and desperate. They built small fires with pieces of their sleds, melting snow for water. Some accounts, grim, unthinkable, suggest what happened next. Rescue parties years later would find scattered bones, cracked open, scraped clean, evidence that in the final hours, human instinct overpowered morality. They hadn't turned evil, they'd turned human. And yet, there's something deeper about their story, something more haunting than hunger. It's the silence. The fact that they vanished completely, leaving only fragments, buttons, journals, a few human remains, like whispers trapped in the snow. Back in England, years passed. The Empire sent ship after ship to search for Franklin's expedition. None found answers. His wife, Lady Jane Franklin, never gave up. She spent her fortune funding private missions, refusing to believe her husband had died in vain. But the Arctic guards its secrets well. Decades turned to centuries, and the ice never gave them back. It's as if the sea decided, these men belong to me now. Even when explorers rediscovered fragments, spoons, a piece of wood, a strip of cloth with initials, it only deepened the mystery. What really happened out there? Did they die quickly? Or did they wander for weeks, haunted by the faces of their friends frozen in the snow? Sometimes, truth doesn't fade with time. It freezes, waiting for someone brave enough to look. And in the Arctic, truth is not found in what's visible, but in what's missing. The winds still carry their names, whispering across the ice at night. Inuit hunters spoke of pale figures walking the tundra long after the ships were gone, silent, aimless, eyes wide open. Spirits of sailors who refused to stop walking. Maybe they're still walking. Maybe they're still looking for home. The Arctic stayed silent for over a century. The winds erased the footprints. The snow buried the bones. The sea sealed the ships beneath a sheet of ice, a frozen graveyard untouched by time. For generations, The story of Franklin's lost expedition became a legend, a ghost tale whispered in sailor bars and classrooms. 2 ships vanished, without a single survivor, without a single witness. It became more myth than history. But myths have a strange way of calling to those who listen. In 2014, nearly 170 years later, a Canadian search team scanning the Arctic seabed noticed something unusual, a shadow on the sonar. Too symmetrical, too perfect to be a rock. When divers descended into that icy darkness, they saw it, the Erebus, standing proud in the cold black water, her timbers still strong, her masts reaching upward like frozen arms. It was as if the ship was waiting for someone to remember. 2 years later, the Terror was found too, resting miles away, almost perfectly preserved, her windows still intact, her tools still lying where they'd been left. Inside, the world had stopped in motion. Cups on tables, boots beside bunks, a desk with a pen still resting above an unfinished logbook. It wasn't destruction, it was suspension. Like time itself had frozen the ship's mid-breath. The divers described it as stepping into a dream. The water was so clear, so still, that it felt like trespassing into another world, one untouched by decay, where 129 souls still lingered. Some said they felt a presence. Others said they heard a faint tapping rhythmic from deep inside the hull. Science will tell you it's nothing. The shifting of timber, the expansion of air bubbles, the movements of pressure. But the divers didn't sound convinced. When they resurfaced, one of them said quietly, "It felt like the ship was alive, like it was watching us." Researchers studied the wrecks, examined clothing fibers, bones, and artifacts. They reconstructed their journey, piece by piece. They even found DNA traces linking the remains to the descendants of the sailors. Families who never knew what happened to their ancestors finally had closure. But even with all the discoveries, one question remains unanswered. Why did they disappear so completely?
No storms.
No sinking recorded, just silence. Some scientists suggest lead poisoning from the canned food drove the men insane. Others believe they fell through thin ice or died of exposure. But some, even among the explorers, believe something else entirely. That the Arctic took them, not by force, but by choice. There's an eerie peace in the way the ships were found. Not wrecked, not destroyed, just waiting. It's as if the ocean itself kept them safe, not as a warning, but as a memory. Maybe Franklin and his men did find the Northwest Passage, not through maps, but through death. Maybe their journey didn't end in tragedy, but in transformation. Because the sea has always been both destroyer and keeper. It devours what it loves, and preserves it forever. Now, as the world warms and the ice retreats, the frozen fleet emerges again. A reminder of human ambition and nature's quiet vengeance. When you see the ghostly outline of Erebus under the Arctic water, it's not just a ship, it's a mirror. It reflects our hunger to conquer the unknown, and the price we pay when the unknown conquers us. Imagine standing there, the snow swirling, the silence absolute. You see the shadow of the Erebus below, resting in darkness, yet somehow breathing. You realize the truth. Some ghosts don't haunt us because they're lost, they haunt us because they were found. And as the ice closes again each winter, sealing the ships beneath, the Arctic whispers one final message, not of death, but of remembrance. Soft ambient hum, faint creak of a distant whisper carried by wind. We never left. We are still here. Because the ocean never forgets.
Pause.
Then the haunting Sea Shadows outro begins, deep cinematic bass fading to silence. This is Sea Shadows, where the waves guard history and the sea remembers what men tried to erase.